Hello, people of the internet. If you like strange people and creepy characters and people who talk about them, you found us.
Hi.
Yeah, hi, welcome to Ignore the Bell. I'm Nathan,
And I'm Tyler.
and we are talking about very strange people, very creepy characters in two Dan Gilroy films. So we are going to be talking about Nightcrawler, which is from 2014, and Velvet Buzzsaw, which just got released on Netflix.
hmm Yeah. All right. So I'm going to set the timer for 30 minutes and we'll get going.
All right, enjoy.
Oh man, I wish this discussion could go on forever.
Ignore the bell. We're gonna keep going, people.
Dan Gilroy. So he has both written and directed Nightcrawler and Velvet Buzzsaw. I didn't realize this until we started, until just before we started recording. But he also did another film that's got Denzel Washington that came out in 2017, Roman J. Israel Esquire, which I have not seen. So I thought that we covered his films where he's
Filmography.
both, yeah, with being both a writer and director, but I guess not.
Yeah. Well, that's all right. There's still a lot to talk about with each of these films.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so,
thematically, I think they work well together. I don't know how well the
yeah.
other one would. So,
hmm
before we get
So,
into a discussion, can I just go over his filmography?
yes, absolutely. That sounds great.
Okay, so he was a screenwriter before he got the opportunity to direct. I mean, I'm assuming that it was getting the opportunity that he had wanted to direct for a while, because I think that's true for a lot of screenwriters.
hmm
So in 92, then he wrote the screenplay Free Jack. And then 94, he wrote Chasers. In 2005, so that's a big jump, 11 years later, then he wrote Two for the Money. Um, and then he wrote The Fall from 2006, City of Light, which was a TV series in 2007. And so I'm really not very familiar with any of those. But then this is where you're going to start recognizing the titles. So he directed, or sorry, he wrote the story. It doesn't say screenplay, just developed the story for Real Steel, which is from 2011. And how did you explain it to me?
It's basically Rock'em Sock'em Robots, the movie.
That's amazing. The
It's
fact that they
actually
didn't
such a
call it
fun
that.
film.
And did you say, have you seen that one?
Yes, yeah, I have seen that
Oh,
one. Yeah.
oh, that's great. So you've seen at least something that where he developed the story. I feel like that was like a Twilight Zone episode, maybe like an old Richard Matheson short story or something. I'm not sure. But in any case, I'm curious now. Rock'em Sock'em's Robots, the movie sounds amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a surprisingly really fun, movie. Father and son who are training this robot to be in the robot boxing league. So
That's amazing.
yeah, and the robot, of course, is not meant to be an actual boxing robot. It's just like whatever, like a dummy or whatever. So it's just supposed to like a sparring partner essentially for
Oh,
other
okay.
robots. So they're like, yeah, we can make this thing work. Well, the kid is like trying to make the thing work, and the dad is like, no, 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 it's a waste of time. And then he comes around. So anyway,
So this is like the underdog story of that underdog robot.
yes, absolutely.
This sounds so good. This actually makes me appreciate Velvet Buzzsaw a little bit more because when I think on this, it's like, oh, he's okay with silly.
Yeah.
Because Buzzsaw definitely has got some silly stuff.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
at least the absurd, right?
Right.
2012, he wrote the screenplay for The Bourne Legacy, so one of the Bourne
Mhm.
films. Then 2014, this is where he both wrote and directed it. So 2014, you get Nightcrawler. Then
Mhm.
he wrote the screenplay for Kong Skull Island. That was 2017. Roman J. Israel Esquire, 2017. Velvet Buzzsaw wrote it and directed it. That's 2019. Um, and Roman J. Israel Esquire, he wrote that and directed that. And then, at least according to IMDb, he is attached as writing the screenplay for Stan Lee's Annihilator. So
No
that,
idea.
yeah, I don't know either. That is, I'm not sure if it even has a release date, but all right. So I think what we'll do is we'll just go we'll start with Nightcrawler, and then we'll
Mhm.
get into Velvet Buzzsaw.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so I'll kind of give my little background on this. I saw Nightcrawler not that long after it came out, because it was on Canadian Netflix, maybe 2015, I want to say,
Mhm.
something like that. And I knew about the film when it was doing the festival circuit. I heard, I think it was an interview with Jake Gyllenhaal on Q when Jian Ghomeshi was still doing Q on CBC Radio,
Oh,
and
okay.
it sounded so good. It just sounded brilliant. Jake Gyllenhaal was very funny about that. He was like, "My character's not creepy at all. Why would you say that? Why would you say that I look greasy in the film?" Like he really was like, he was being silly about it. But it's like, what do you mean he came off creepy? That's not what I was going for at all.
Right.
And so,
Oh man.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I was so interested in seeing it. So then when it came out, then I watched it and it just like floored me. It blew me away. It was, oh my goodness. I really am going to try my very best to put the brakes on how much praise I give the film because yeah, I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I had wanted to see it from the year it came out. And but I just never got around to it. You know, even when it was nominated for at least one Oscar, but I believe a few, right?
I don't know.
Some-
It's a good question.
um, anyway, and so I finally just got around to watching it this past week, and yeah, it was it. All I really knew about the film was that it was about this guy who took pictures of I only knew about like car crashes. That's it. But it's much more than that.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah, yeah.
really such a good film.
Yes.
Um,
Oh, I'm glad that you like it. I'm glad that you
yeah.
like
No, it's incredible. I mean it has like this like a brilliant opening of just, like, clearly a character that we're not supposed to like, but that we sympathize with. And it
Yeah.
does it so well, where, he's stealing all these, pieces of metal and whatever from private property and trying to trade them in just to get some money. And this idea of him being a really shrewd negotiator
Yes.
is something that, you know, defines his character, really.
Yes. Okay. Can I jump in here?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that this film could be studied by screenwriters, by promising directors, like in film school. Like you could study so many elements of this film and learn so much. The economy of of how economic he is in establishing character in that first scene is incredible. That
Absolutely.
like he is such a well-developed character within several minutes of the film. Like just several minutes into the film, you learn so much about him, but you don't learn it in any kind of ham-fisted way. It's not being spoon-fed to you. It doesn't feel awkward. It all just it's like in telling you who this character is in a way that film is so equipped to do, so well equipped to do, because it doesn't have exposition. Exposition. You don't have this awkward conversation of, him and a friend or something like that. It's like, oh, you just keep stealing things and you're a low life. And it's like, no, I'm an entrepreneur. Like you don't have that at all.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
all comes
None of
across
the like, I'm just looking for a job. Like, no, it's done
right
so well.
so well. And even like seeing that it's like, well, he doesn't just steal the fence, right? That's like just panning into the back seat of his little Toyota, and then you
Yeah.
see all the other stuff, and then he goes and meets that guy, and he's kind of listing it off. Then
Yeah.
you're like, oh my goodness, like you just
Like
like
the
especially
manhole cover.
the
It's
manhole
just like,
covers,
oh my goodness.
and it's amazing because you get that intro, then you end up learning like it is such a microcosm, or maybe not a microcosm, but a miniature film of what you ultimately get with Nightcrawler as an entire film, where you have that interaction with the foreman of the construction site, where he's willing to work with him, but it's like only so far. It's,
Right.
oh, well, I will definitely buy stolen material, construction material from you, but I'm not going to hire you because you're a thief. that it's like I've got my own set of ethics, and it's like you're a gross, skeezy person, and so it's like that's what he ultimately gets with the producer of the news director with Rene Russo and her character, that it's the same kind of dynamic of, well, I'm willing to work with you up to a point, but I think that you're unethical and I think that you cross lines that I'm not necessarily comfortable with, but this benefits me, so I'll work with you so far.
Right. Yeah. And I think one of the other really brilliant, brilliant things about this film is Jake Gyllenhaal's character, and he struggles with like human interaction, like relationships.
Yes.
Right. And the film does a very good job of not showing the relationships that he has with people. Like you get like, okay, he's been to this person that he's selling all the metal to several times before.
Yeah.
They have a relationship, but we don't get to really see it. All we see is that one scene. And even with everything with Rene Russo, you don't see them like, you see them briefly on a date. And that's it. Like, you know that there's all this stuff going on with the relationship, but it's like, well, but yeah, that's not something.
I think that it should get all of the awards for the year for all the stuff that it didn't put on screen. It's just like, wow, you've actually figured it out. You don't have to show us like them. Like, he just has this little reference where, because he gives her the proposition when they're in the restaurant of, like, here's what I want from you. I want you to basically, provide me with this, with sexual favors as a reciprocation for what I'm providing you, that this will help your career, and in exchange I want this in return, this transaction, right? A transactional approach to romance. And then it's like, she's like, this is disgusting, and she doesn't want anything to do with this. But then later on, then he's like, and then we were in my apartment, I want you to do the things that I want you to do without you like questioning me, like what I first say. And so then you're like, oh, I'm watching a movie from the 1950s. You just, like, you didn't ever show the bedroom scene, but you didn't have to. Because why do you have to show that? It's like, because there's no reason to show that scene. We're not going to learn anything that we didn't already have to learn. And I think the film actually works better because it forces you to pay attention. It actually treats you like an intelligent adult. Like, okay, I get it. She is going along with this. And it's so brilliant that you don't see those scenes of them in the apartment, in this romantic encounter, because she doesn't even want to think about it.
Right.
Right. So to me, it's like, that's perfect, because it's like, that it's happening, but in her head, she's like, oh, it happens, but I don't even want to acknowledge that it's happening. And you, the viewer, are put in that same position of, what's happening, but you're not really privy to it.
Yes. Yeah. No, so brilliant. Honestly, all the awards just for that.
Yes, just for that. What film have you ever seen, like, in the last, I don't know how many decades, where it refers to the fact that they've got this romantic or sexual relationship, that it doesn't then cut to a bedroom scene?
Yeah. Having an overt sexual relationship doesn't mean that it needs to be an overt visual display.
No, because what does the viewer actually get from this? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, aside from, like, I don't know what that does. Having scenes like that, there are times, I'm not saying that you can never have that scene in a film, but I'm saying that those scenes are often just so unnecessary that it just, and it just seems so obvious that you're pandering to a certain group of people. It's like, oh, you might get some brief nudity in the film, keep watching. And do you know what I mean? Like, that's how it often feels to me. And it's just like, but
which is usually very off-putting for me, but
like, that's the thing.
And anyway. That's actually being sidetracked a little bit. That's actually one thing that I was frustrated about in the beginning of Velvet Buzzsaw. I was like, is it really gonna like start like going into this sort of stuff? And I'm still like a little bit like, I don't know that you really needed all those scenes in there, or to be like so, I don't know, like with like his hand going up the woman's dress, and it's just like, I don't need that scene. Like,
but do you know why that happens? Like, I will defend that to some degree, because I agree with you, but then the reason why that comes up is because there's that chrome globe that's got the holes in it. And then they say when they first meet it, it's like, oh, it's everything. It's about sex. It's about, all of this stuff. And then the woman puts her hand in just like he does that, but then it kills her. And so it's this interesting connection between sex and violence or sex and death, right? And the idea that random sexual encounters can kill you, right? Because certainly in the age of, venereal disease and STDs and HIV and all of that, that it's like it's not as immediate, it's not as quick. I think visually that's what it's trying to do. It's trying to connect those things.
Yeah, that is actually very interesting, and I appreciate it a little bit more now.
I know, because I felt the same way as you. I was like, this seems just gratuitous.
Yes.
And if it doesn't have a purpose, then I don't see the need for it.
Especially because they do he does a shot of his arm on her leg or whatever, and then it cuts to their faces, and then it cuts back to his arm going up. And I'm just I don't think you needed that second one. But yeah, it's still but anyway, getting back to Nightcrawler, with the majority of this film takes place at night. Not all of it, but the majority.
Absolutely.
And as anyone who's in film knows, shooting at night is so much more difficult and expensive than shooting during the day. And there was I don't think there was a single time while I was watching the film that I ever thought, this scene is too dark. And I was watching it on a fairly dim screen, but still just very, very successful in that way. And honestly, it's so brilliant, watching Jake Gyllenhaal's character, that's awesome from a technical standpoint. But then seeing Jake Gyllenhaal's character start appreciating light and, and shots, specific camera angles and everything.
I mean, I'm gonna go off on that because that's so I have so many good things to say about that. But in regards to shooting at night, I mean, it is really interesting because I think that this is such an LA film, right? That if you are interested even in a little bit to do with Los Angeles, then you'll love the movie because you really get to explore Los Angeles through the film. And see this side of it where you're just literally just going all over, but it's all taking place at night. But because Los Angeles is just such a big city and it is very well lit, then it's it does make shooting at night possible, kind of like shooting at night in New York City, that you can kind of get away with it a little bit more because there is light coming in from all different sources.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But but you are right, because then but there's still huge challenges in shooting at night, and then getting up into the Hollywood Hills, then you don't have a lot of light up there, but that's where he starts, that's where we really see him getting the lighting right.
Yes. Oh man.
Okay, because I'm so eager to get into that part, but if you have other stuff to say first,
not regarding that, but yeah, there's, oh my goodness, the foreshadowing in this film is so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
When the other Nightcrawler, as their career title is
Bill Paxton.
Yeah, most likely the one who gets in the car accident.
Yep.
Yeah. And then
they're called stringers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
right.
Stringers. Yeah.
Right. Okay. But yeah, so when he gets into that car accident, and Jake Gyllenhaal's character, I'm blanking on his name.
Lou.
Lou. That's right. Yes. And then Lou is trying to film it. And his partner is dude, that's one of our own. We shouldn't be doing this. And he's just what does it matter? And it's so good.
Right.
And it comes back at the end. And it's he just cares about getting that shot. That's
right.
all that he cares about.
That's
and
right.
It's, so brilliant.
Yes.
I love that.
Oh my goodness, it is so brilliant because Rick is literally right there saying don't do this, and he's well, it doesn't matter, he's now the story, it doesn't matter who we are, that this is what we do. And I do want to talk about the idea that he is not just it's not just that he doesn't know how to interact with people, but you get this brilliant line very close to the end of the film where he says to Rick, he's like, have you ever considered that it's not that I don't understand people, it's that I don't like people? That he
Yeah.
does understand them, he just doesn't care, you know.
Right.
That he knows like proper protocol and how to be a normal human being to some degree. He just
Mhm.
often doesn't care.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like that really does tie into the film's decision at large to avoid showing those relationships, right? Like those connections between people. Because it's like, we don't care. We're
Right.
following Lou, so we don't care about any of these relationships. Like we don't care about what Rick and Lou do, you know, on outside of night crawling.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
exactly. Um, I've heard Stephen King before, then he has said that most movies feel like short stories. And then he said, you know, but occasionally you'll get a movie that does feel like a novel. And what he means by that, he doesn't, I don't know if he went into it in detail when he was like mentioning this, but the idea behind a short story, like Edgar Allan Poe really came up with this idea of what a short story should do because he popularized short stories. It's that a short story should have a single concept or theme that gets fully explored from beginning to end. It's like just a single one that's what you're trying
Mm.
to do. You're not trying to pull in 4 or 5 different concepts and themes and try to resolve all of them. And it's like
Right.
Nightcrawler is so laser focused on this theme, on this thing, that's just like everything else, push it to the side. It knows exactly what it's trying to do, you know, like
Yes. Yeah.
from every level, like from the performances that you get,
Hmm.
the music, the lighting, the mise en scène, the script, everything knows exactly what it's supposed to be doing. Oh,
Absolutely.
and I would say like
So
this is
brilliant.
kind of jumping ahead. Velvet Buzzsaw doesn't do that. It's trying to accomplish multiple things, but
Yes.
Nightcrawler is just it knows exactly what it's trying to accomplish.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Oh
I
my
mean,
goodness.
I know that I'm personifying the
There's-
film a fair bit by saying the film knows what it wants, but but I think people understand what I mean by that. It's like what the film actually is doing. It's
Yeah. No, it is. It's such a good film. If you haven't seen it, go watch it.
oh yeah, oh yeah, it is
Like,
incredible.
it took me like 5 years to watch it.
I know. I've been telling you from the first time I saw it, dude, you got to see Nightcrawler. And I don't mean the
It's true.
X-Men character. I mean the movie
Right.
Nightcrawler. And it's going to sound weird and you're going to be like, that doesn't sound like it's my thing or that doesn't sound that good. And I'm like, you've got to see this.
Well, here's the thing. I think that the concept of this film is so brilliant. Like it's just showing this character in this career that has never at least not popularly in my level of knowledge, never been explored.
Right.
Of this idea of these people who are there on the scene of these terrible accidents or
Yeah.
crimes or whatever, and who are able to professionally get footage of
Yes.
all of these things. It's so brilliant in concept of like, well, yeah, okay, how do we enter that world? Okay, well, we have this outsider character
Yes.
who doesn't have a job, and then he's like, I could do this, and
Yep.
then but he has, you know, this whole business background, so he knows how to do these things. He knows how to negotiate,
Yep.
and he is so perfectly placed for this film, for this story. And
Yes.
it's oh yes,
Yeah.
as a writer, I just look at that and I go, yes, you nailed it. Like because
It,
you're
oh,
supposed to like you should have your main character be like you should choose your main character based on why is it that main character and not somebody else that we're following.
exactly.
And yeah, Lou is just that perfect gateway into this world. And the fact that he doesn't care about, you know, all these different, you know, rules or laws
Right.
is so compelling because you're just like, well, what are the limits? And are they breaking the law by showing these things and all these things? And like he knows what he's doing. He
Yep.
knows that he can get away with, you know, filming that house,
Yep.
the site of the triple murder.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. The fact that he had the footage of the two criminals
Yeah.
and was just like, I need this to be a bigger story than
Right.
just this one crime.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. It brings full front, especially in this, in this day and age, where there is all this talk about, the media's influence and everything. The fact that you're saying like, okay, well, they're not directly related to the media, but they are still affecting how the story plays out, how it's presented, and they are changing the story by the way that they're showing it.
Absolutely.
Like it's so good because he literally does that.
Yes. You get
Lou
to see,
literally changes the story.
right. You get to see media manipulation of a narrative, that they
Mhm.
are constructing a narrative and a particular kind of narrative in order to really, more than anything else, to make money, to get ratings, to get more ad revenue from advertisers, right? To just get
Yeah.
like more money coming in that way. That really, that's what it is, that there is this commercial incentive to dramatize the news. And so I've got so much to say about that side of it, the commercial aspect of what he's doing. Could I just let me just add a couple points to
For
what
sure.
you said?
Yeah.
So, for one thing, like you are right, I've never seen a character like this about stringers and people who do this as a living until this film. And there is a Netflix documentary. I can't remember. It's a documentary series, either 2016 or 2017. So it's after Nightcrawler. I think in part that Netflix picked up on this of like how
Yeah.
interesting this whole world is. It's called Shot in the Dark.
Okay.
And it is like maybe 8 episodes long. And it is exactly about this. It is about the people in Los Angeles who are stringers who do this. And it shows every part of their job. And it's like Nightcrawler got it so bang on. It's incredible. Like it's really worth watching. It is so interesting.
Okay. Yeah, because it honestly, I feel uh like Dan Gilroy, I got his name right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Dan Gilroy. I feel like he found out about this job one day and he was like, I need to know more about this. Basically, the story of Lou is the story of Dan Gilroy discovering this story.
Right.
Where
Like
he went,
coming
oh,
into this world.
yeah, he's like, oh, this is a career. I want to know more about it.
Yeah.
And how can people be successful? How can they, make a living this way?
Yeah.
How do they and the film is his exploration of this world that so many people are completely unaware of.
Right.
Like it's so good, so
Absolutely.
brilliant.
Yeah. And like I say, that documentary Shot in the Dark, it shows these stringers and it shows the competition between them. It shows them driving to like these different scenes, trying to win the night, the relationships that they have with news directors and producers and selling them, and the ethics of it, and what do you do if somebody's in distress and you're the only one there? Do you rescue them or do you just film? Like it's all real. And the interesting thing is that as gets explored in this documentary series, it really is a Los Angeles phenomenon. And there's a few reasons for this. So that's why I'm saying that this film is very much an LA film, right? And like Hollywood has done a lot of LA films, but this is, I think, right up there with a whole bunch of other ones that are really exploring what Los Angeles is. And some of the reasons for it is, number one, you've got a massive population there, and so you've got a lot of people watching local news, right? That a lot of people outside of Los Angeles don't care about, but people within the city do care about. This idea of like crime, urban crime creeping into the suburbs. That's a real thing that people are interested in. You don't get rain and you don't get snow, and so it is. And there's tons and tons of roads, so you can do this year round. You can drive crazy fast. Los Angeles is so spread out, so there are so many. Like I forget how many they explain it in Shot in the Dark, but I'm sure more than any other American city, you've got more highways, more roads, more streets because you don't have a lot of tunnels, you don't have a lot of bridges or anything like that. It is just roads everywhere because there's such sprawl to Los Angeles. Like this would never work in New York City. You couldn't do this as a career, certainly not as easily, because it's like, for one thing, you're just going to be stuck in traffic. You're never going to get from one place to another. Right. And this is also why they have to do it at night, because the roads are totally open. And then once all the first responders are all going to that location, no police officer is going to stop you from speeding because you know exactly where they're heading. And they're too busy. Anyone who are in the area. So it's like, it works perfectly. It's like, dude, you could totally do this job. And this job does exist. And the great thing about it is like, the great thing about the film, this is not a great thing in general, but the great thing about the film is underneath all of this is the implication that the only reason that you've got somebody like Lou doing this and doing this unethical, really creepy thing. That's incredible. That's been 30 minutes. I still so much more to say on this.
I'm gonna reset the timer for another half hour.
Sounds good.
All right.
So underneath all of this is the implication that it's like, we look at him. I've said this before, where it's the idea of Jonathan Swift and what he says about satire, that satire is a mirror in which you see everyone else's reflection but your own. Right? Mm-hmm. It's that you go, he's a bad person. He is gross. He's creepy. And it's like, I'm the one watching it on the news,
Yeah.
That anybody in Los Angeles who does tune into the news to watch that, then they're like, oh, that's so horrible. Oh, that's so vile. And it's like, the only reason these people are shooting this is because you're watching it.
Right. Yeah.
You're complicit.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's, I love that you brought up that this idea of like, well, why would the police, stop them if the police are already headed to this crime scene? And it's something that I have very much thought of, not specifically that, but very much thought of before, where, when you come across like a police officer who's like, pulled somebody over and like on the other side of the road, let's say.
Yeah.
Right. And then everybody just kind of slows down. And like, they're
this
like, oh no, the
police.
To speed
up.
Right. I'm like, the police are clearly busy right now. You know that there's somebody around you who's going to follow you.
Exactly.
I've always found it so funny that like just everybody is always like, oh no, there's a police car over there.
Right.
They're busy. They're already on a case.
Right. The only time this ever came up for me where I realized that this wouldn't work, it was like going from Detroit to Toronto. And just as you cross over into Windsor on the 401, I think it's the 401 there, unless it's the 402, but I'm pretty sure it's the 401. Anyway, past a police officer who had pulled over a guy. So then I'm thinking, and I don't really speed, but I was thinking, oh, okay, there won't be another, cop. And then like, a minute later, there was another one who had pulled somebody else over. And then I'm like, oh, well, that's it. That's 2 in a row. And then I think I counted 7 or 8 within 10 minutes. And they just like figured this out. They're just like, everyone's going to slow down and they're going to be like, oh, there's a police officer. And then it's like, then they get the next one and the next one and the next one. But so that's when I was like, ooh, that doesn't always work.
Right.
But in Nightcrawler, it does, because they're listening to the police scanner. And so they know that there is an emergency, and they know how many police officers are going to go there.
Right.
And so they're able to get away with this. And like I say, this is all real. That he's talking about a real life subject. This is not fantasy. There are actual stringers whose job it is, who have, not whose job it is, who have created these jobs as, in these kind of interstices of society where it's like there's this little gap and it's like, I'm going to exist right here.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because I didn't know about like this career beforehand.
Me neither. Not until I watched Nightcrawler.
Right. And when I was watching it, at first I was like, this isn't a real thing, is it? And then as I kept watching, I was like, this is definitely a real thing.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it because, like I say, I watched that documentary series, Shot in the Dark, and I was just like, this is just a real life Nightcrawler. I'm like, Nightcrawler's totally real.
Right.
It's really incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
right.
yeah, if you or anybody watching, if you loved Nightcrawler and you're just like, man, I would love to explore this further, you've got like 8 hours or something of a
Oh, wow.
documentary to enjoy. I think they were hour-long episodes. Even if it was half hours, it's still like another 4 hours to enjoy.
Right. Yeah.
Um, okay, so can we? Okay, I
Move
want to
on
talk.
to Velvet Buzzsaw.
No, not even
No?
close. I have got so much more to say on Nightcrawler.
Okay.
So
I'm excited for this.
okay, the amazing thing to me about it is that okay, you see him. If you kind of put aside the ethics, what you're seeing is someone falling in love with an art form and
Mm,
learning the craft. And it's really learning the craft of filmmaking. And it
yeah.
is so fascinating to see this, like, because it is, you get this happening a couple times, like, and it is just, it's the economy of revealing this is so impressive in that Dan Gilroy, both through the script and what you see on screen and the way it's being shot, that you learn so much so quickly. And when he at every scene is vital, and you don't get duplication, you don't get repetition. Every single
Right.
scene, it builds like this.
Yeah.
There's never anything that's on the same level. It is just, it builds and builds and builds and boom, right?
Yeah.
So when he first goes to that house and the door is open, and then he goes in and then he films the refrigerator with the bullet holes in it, and then
Yes.
films the couple through the
and
window.
and he moves around some of the photos on the fridge
Yes,
to make it just a
exactly.
little bit more cinematic. Oh, it's so
Exactly, he
good.
does that. And then he goes to like up in the Hollywood Hills where there's the crash and he's there before the first responders are there. And then he's trying to film and he's got his light on top of the camera. You can see he's got a much better camera at this point, right?
Right.
That
Yeah.
he's trying to do it and he knows it's just not right. He is a director who is trying to set a scene and he knows it's just not right. So he
Yeah.
literally just takes the man and pulls him to get the lighting right. That this film, in its adoration of the technique of lighting a film, is so amazing. If you love film, there's no way
Hmm.
you cannot love Nightcrawler, because this is like all the technical aspects of then pulling him to get him in front of the headlights. And then it's like, and the music really is swelling at this point. It is just like you were supposed to be moved along with him, that it's like, wow, he is doing something that is beautiful and artistic and so horribly wrong all at the
Yes.
same time.
Absolutely. And then he gets like the police cars in the rear view mirror, like coming up, and you're just like, oh my goodness. Like he has the eye,
He has
if
the eye.
there.
He is a visionary. He is, like a
Mhm.
savant for this. Like he has
Yes.
just, he was born to do this, and he knows that he was born to do this. And we get to see him become like this superhero type
Hmm.
figure in this universe of just like he has got powers of doing this because of his ethics, because of his worldview, because of how he sees human beings, because of his drive, his ambition. All of those things allow him to be the great one, to be the
Right.
absolute best at what he is doing. And
Yeah.
it is just so amazing to watch. And then you do get that, because then it just continues building. You're like, wow, he really crossed some ethical lines by pulling the guy there in front of the headlights. But then you go to like the scene of the triple murder, and it's like the guys are there and he films them, and then going in there and filming all of like the victims, and including the guy who lets out a
Right.
moan. And it's like,
Yeah.
he's not even dead, but then he carefully edits that out and edits
Yeah.
out, the guys leaving there, but just exploring this. It is a tracking shot. It's a long take. It is
Yeah.
filmmaking. It is the beauty of filmmaking, of how you can tell a narrative without using dialogue, without using exposition.
Yes.
It's like a director from the 1920s who's suddenly freed up to take the camera outside of the box and to be able to explore. And it's like,
Right.
wow, the stories I can tell by doing this, the freedom of camera movement.
And the fact that Renee Russo is such a perfect pair to him because she is directing the news anchors as that footage is playing and saying, okay, you want to say this now, you want to
Yeah,
say that now. Like
yeah,
she's very much guiding, like, okay, we're coming up to a crib. don't tell them that there's not a baby in there. Let them know, like,
Right.
oh, we hope that there isn't, and everything.
Right.
Like, it's so well done because she is the perfect, partner in all
Absolutely.
this.
She is. She is the perfect partner in all of this. So I mean, that is just, and then, when he later on with, the car chase, and he is a director in that he's setting it up. He's getting these guys to go to a more public location before he makes the call, and then getting Rick, because Rick has crossed him in this way of, you know what I mean? Of
Yes,
I'm not sure I'm
stealing the
comfortable with this.
bargaining power. Oh my goodness.
Oh,
so well done.
Yeah.
What do you think you deserve, Rick?
You hear all the hundred, no, don't say 100, right? And he's like, yeah,
75. All right.
and then that
I could have gotten more, couldn't I have? Absolutely.
right. And Rick then, when he's like, oh, don't worry, he's dead. I want you to go in for the close up, and I'm gonna go for a wider angle from back here, right? And then it's like he gets shot, and he does all of this because he's directing everything, and it's because, and it is so easy to look at him and say that he's a sociopath, that he doesn't care about human beings, that he just sees people as objects to be used and to direct and all of that. And you can absolutely make that argument. But he even brings it up, as I said, where he's like, what if it's not that I don't understand people, it's that I don't like them? Mm-hmm. And I think that's where you get these really, really big questions that come out of it. You've got questions of who else is just treating people like objects within the media, right? Yeah. That you're not dealing with actors. You're not dealing with people who are playing pretend. You're dealing with real human beings. And every time the media is constructing a narrative, and like, this is not like me like attacking, like, this is not a political statement. This is just like the media is always doing this. It's always constructing a narrative and using people, in order to, and you can argue, to exploit them under the guise that, we're trying to inform people, but it's like ultimately you're exploiting them in order to make a profit.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, having said that Rene Russo's character is the perfect pair, she's not a complete wild card in the media industry, right? Like, this is something that news producers do in the real world. They do, guide these stories. And they have to predict where stories are going to go, which affects where the story goes. Yeah. And it's incredible how that works. The final moments of this film, where she's told, like, oh, we found out that there were drugs in the walls, so it wasn't just this, B&E, and she's like, okay, they'll cover it at noon.
Yep.
And he's like, wait, what do you mean? Like, we have to, that's part of the story. It's like, it's not part of this story.
Exactly.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. And for a real world example, it's not a perfect example, but I forget which network it is, so I won't want to say exactly. I believe it was Fox News, but don't hold me to that. But they accidentally had a graphic pop up on screen that
Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yes, yeah. Like the
I
year
think it
that
was
she died.
Fox News. I'm pretty sure.
But she wasn't dead. And it's
right.
Just like, oh, we have this graphic that's ready to go.
They've got it ready to go.
And it's like,
yeah.
I look at that and you go, you guys are kind of skeevy there. It's not.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and this is honestly, I probably shouldn't even say this because this is such a minor example, but a few years ago when the Blue Jays were in the playoffs, then it was like they were losing the game, but there was still like 3 or 4 innings to go, and if they lost that game, then they were going to be out of the playoffs. And then I think it was Fox Sports at the time. Look at Fox go. It's amazing. But anyway, the graphic on the bottom of the screen was, watch the World Series, Kansas City Royals versus, I forget who they played in the World Series. And it was like, they already decided they were advertising for the World Series. And it's like, we could still win, you jerks. You're literally advertising for something that hasn't happened yet. And I mean, it does. They are doing things that, and I mean, like, you would have to be incredibly naive and incredibly ignorant to not believe that stories are being manipulated in some way to make them more commercial, to make them more exciting, and that they are omitting key details, or they don't get into the nuances and the complexity of a story, that it's selective, that it's like, it has to be, and like, it's not even a criticism. It's just like, you can't tell every angle and every aspect of every story within a reasonable span of time and get to everything. So you have to make these editorial decisions all the time, and ultimately what's driving them, their impetus, is the profit incentive, that they have to do what is going to keep people watching and what's going to be most profitable. But there's that uncomfortable complicity that you, the viewer, then have in this, in realizing that when I am watching this, I am supporting their approach to storytelling.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness. It's such a brilliant film.
Oh yeah. Like,
so well done.
Yeah.
Just every single aspect of this film is incredible.
Yes. I'm so glad that, like, that you get it. I'll just say a couple things, then we'll move on to Velvet Buzzsaw. Mm-hmm. Super quick. I mean, you've got all the technical aspects of the film, the themes, the screenplay, practical effects of, like, those car chases. You get this tension in the film,
yes.
The way the music is there, the soundtrack, that everything is working. It's like, it is, everything about this is just functioning. It's like a really well-tuned V8 engine, where it's like every cylinder is firing perfectly when it's supposed to, that that there's no lag, you don't have any valve that's dragging, everything is just working perfectly in this film.
The specific scenes, like crimes that he comes across, are perfect. Like, they're so well done, because you can tell, okay, he's been doing this for a while, after, like, between the first and the second scenes that he goes to, and you don't know how long he's been doing this. Like, there are some references here and there to, like, how long they've been working together or whatever. But you can tell that he has been fine-tuning this craft over this entire time.
There's all the subtle little hints of it without pulling us into the, all of the tiny minutia of it,
yes.
right? And I mean, like, you could say, what is it, like, I know that if you've got this character, like the Mary Sue concept of, but what is it if it's a guy? I forget. I know there's a term for it.
I forget. I don't know, Mary Sam. No, that's not right. I don't remember.
But, like, the male term for it, the film shows us that he's not.
Gary Sue. I think it's Gary Sue.
Oh, okay, a Gary Sue. So it shows us that he's not that, because, as you're saying, it's obvious that he's been doing it for a while, and you get, like, this is what I'm saying, you get this economy of storytelling where it is so tight, so well done, of just him typing in the names of the headlines on his computer, and that's how and you just go, oh, okay, you just did a whole bunch in between that we haven't seen, and that's how he's deciding how to, like, save the file. He waits until the next morning, sees what headline do they choose, and then types it into his computer. That's my headline.
Oh, so good.
Yes. Okay, good. All right. So I've got connections with this to Velvet Buzzsaw. But before I get into connections with it, so Velvet Buzzsaw, if you haven't seen it, 2019, it is on Netflix, and it came out only, 2 weeks ago or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. It is a strange one, because it's kind of two films in one, where the first half seems like it is a little bit of a satire of the art world, and then the
Yes.
second half is like a B horror film,
Right.
like a B
Yes.
supernatural horror film.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you phrased it that way. That's very much how I felt watching it. Not as a, you know, as a negative to the film. Again, I think knows what it is.
Yep.
And it's very much so. I know that you had given me like a bit of a description of the film before, just very, very briefly, but I had forgotten all about this whole idea of like haunted paintings.
Right.
So
Right.
like I started watching it and I was like, oh, this is just going to be some, art industry like drama. Like, I don't know, like this isn't going to
Right.
be that much fun. But and I honestly, I was almost tuning out. I was like, I don't even know what they're talking about. They're
Okay.
talking about like different like
Yeah.
art things and whatever. And I was like, I don't get it.
Right.
And then, but yeah, very, very much it, it picks up steam and it requires that slow opening.
Yes.
It wouldn't work if you just jump straight into there are haunted paintings and,
Yep.
and whatever. All these characters are connected,
Yeah.
and they're connected in such interesting ways. Uh, yeah, very very interesting film. The varieties of deaths reminded me of Final Destination.
Yes, I've heard that before. Other people have said that it's like Final Destination of the art world.
Right. Yeah.
It's really, yeah, that's it.
Yeah. 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 I didn't like it as much as Nightcrawler, but I
No.
still really enjoyed it.
Okay, good. Yeah, me too. And I feel the same way that it's like, well, I didn't like it as much as Nightcrawler, but I really enjoyed it. And there's elements of it that I really enjoyed, and especially some of the thematic, or maybe like much bigger thematic questions that are similar as the ones being explored in Nightcrawler. That's what I'm interested in, which I'll get to in a little bit here, because I want to know your take on it as well.
Mm.
But I think so. I know that the way a lot of people are not responding very well to Velvet Buzzsaw. Some people really like it, and then
Okay.
other people are disappointed. And so, let me just add this. I did do a short little YouTube video about the connection between Velvet Buzzsaw and Stephen King. Basically, Stephen King wrote a short story called The Road Virus Heads North, and it is very similar, where it's like if you love haunted art that comes to life and then kills you, it's like, then here, you got a short story or you got a movie to enjoy. So, but I think that it works as a B film better than most B films work. And what I mean by that is like a B film, I mean, that's a whole big discussion, but I think in part it's that, it's not taking itself as seriously as other films. And some of the acting might be a little bit schlocky at times. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
where you're not supposed to seriously consider the film. You're just supposed to
Right.
have fun, and it doesn't demand too much of you. And yeah, and if there are mistakes, and it's like, yeah, but what do you want? This isn't supposed to be Citizen Kane. Like, get over yourself.
Right.
But I think it works better than most B films because you get the first half of the film where you really explore who these characters are. And they are not, some people didn't like the characters because they didn't know how to identify with them. They're like, well, I can't relate to that. I'm like, well, I don't care. You know how I feel about that idea of I can't relate.
Mhm.
That's nonsense. I don't care whether you can relate or not. That doesn't
Yeah.
mean whether the person is a well-developed character or not, because there's a lot of
Right.
different cats in the world, and you
Yeah.
haven't met them all. That doesn't mean that it's a bad characterization. It just means you haven't met a person like that. So
Yeah.
I like the fact that they might seem wooden, but they're not. They might seem shallow and vapid and empty of substance. And it's like, yeah, I think they are all of those things, but that's not wooden acting. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
It's that people who
absolutely.
are in this world, they are in a world of superficial trends that are artificially constructed by themselves, saying this is what's in and this is what's out. This is the color that's popular this season. This one's no good. Anybody who has a disdain towards fashion, like the fashion industry, of like, oh, well, that's not in fashion anymore. Fashion to me is such a silly concept, because it's just like, who gets to decide what kind of clothing I wear and whether that is good or bad? Like,
Right.
why is their taste more important? And why is it that something that could be fashionable, 2 years ago, it now is considered to be horrendous? Like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and so,
and that's very much what this film is critiquing.
Yes.
It's doing a very good job of that, of saying like all of this is subjective, and it doesn't matter, whether something is held in high regard or not. Like, what's important is whether or not, like, you enjoy it. And that's not just true of people who are looking at art, but also the people making art, as is seen with John Malkovich's character at the end, with like him being told, like, okay, just, go off and keep making things until you're just making things for you.
For you, yeah.
And that was it's again, like, it doesn't work if you don't have that first half of the film.
Right. It doesn't. And yeah, John Malkovich, that scene at the end there, that kind of redeemed Bird Box a little bit, like his performance in Bird Box, which was just dreadful. It was so bad. But then in this, I was like, oh, good. Like, he still got something of acting skill. Because that scene at the end is really wonderful, with him kind of dancing around with the stick and drawing lines and knowing that the tide ultimately is just going to wash it all away. But it's like, there's a certain beauty in that, like Buddhist Mancala, right, where they do these like things with like stone or sand. They make these beautiful designs, and then they just get rid of them. Like, they put it into, I think, a jar or something like that. But it's beautiful for the moment that it exists, and then it just disappears.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's such a beautiful ending to this film.
Mandela? I can't remember the name of those things. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. But yeah, it's and it is very much something where, like, the film ends and you start to see the credits, and you're like, oh, okay. And then you see, like, like the stick moving on the sand, and you're like, oh, and it, like, you really, like, take it in, and you're just like, okay, this this is actually, like, it really does a great job of tying everything together.
Yes. And so,
it's during the credits.
Yes, it is
fantastic.
Yes, I agree. That is really fantastic. So let me ask you this. Why is it that John Malkovich's character survives and everyone else is dead?
He doesn't seem to care about this art, or elevating this art to some higher status. He discovers that, I don't care about that world. That I just want to be, he started making art because it was fun, because he liked doing it. Yeah. And when he got back to that at the end, then that's what saved him.
Exactly.
That's again, like, that's the theme of this film. Everybody else still gets stuck in this world.
Yep.
Now, let me ask you, why does Natalia Dyer's character get spared from everything?
Which one is she?
Coco. That's her name. That's her character's name. Like, kind of like the intern or whatever.
Okay.
Like, just,
yeah, so that's a good point, because there's actually a couple characters. I think it's all of them, to me, this is just my impression, but it's that they're all doing what John Malkovich ultimately does. Because you've got that younger guy, he's an artist. He was dating the same woman that Jake Gyllenhaal was dating. I forget the guy's name. But he's African American. He was working with this co-op of, like, this collective of artists.
Right.
And then he went commercial, and then he kind of goes back to that.
Yes, he gets so encapsulated by the fire moving in the painting that yeah, he's like, you know what, I can't be here. I can't be part of this world.
Right. But he
Like,
doesn't die, right? As best I remember.
yeah, I don't believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
He
So even
he
though he
again goes
saw
back
the
to
art
his
and he engaged, it's because he extricated himself from
Mhm.
the commercial aspect of the art world. And then the intern, isn't she right? I didn't realize this until afterwards, and I was looking it up. She's from Stranger
She's
Things.
yes, she is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what's her character name on Stranger Things?
I want to say Nancy.
Yeah, Nancy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Did you tell me the actress name? Did you say it?
Yeah, it's Natalia Dyer, I believe.
Natalia Dyer. Okay. So
Yeah.
Natalia Dyer's character, then she extricates herself. She goes back like to like the Midwest, doesn't it? It's like Minnesota or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so she extricates herself from the commercial aspect of the art world. She still loves art. The other guy
Right.
who is an artist, he still loves art. John Malkovich still loves art, and they engaged with it. Like that guy, it started me crazy. I can't remember his name, but the younger artist then,
Mhm.
he is transfixed by these paintings, and he does see it doing these supernatural things, but it doesn't ultimately kill him. And that to me is really interesting, because it seems to be that the criticism at the heart of this is that the commercialization of art is killing it. It is ultimately a self-destructive impulse within the
Yes.
industry, and that if that's what you care about, you are going to be vain and shallow, superficial, and ultimately you're going to have no one who's close to you, no one who cares about you, and your life is meaningless, and you will die. You will die
Yes.
alone.
Yeah, regardless of your role in that industry. You
Yes.
have the art
Yeah.
critic, the artists, you
Yep.
have just all these people who are yeah,
The
all
buyers, the agents,
yeah,
all of them. Yeah.
absolutely. All of them are just wrapped up in this. And when they forget about what led them there in the first place, then yeah, what's the point of you even being there anymore? Like you're ruining this art. You're you're ruining your life and the art itself because
Yeah.
like John Malkovich's character very much went through this and we're coming in at the end
Yeah.
of his story where he lost it. He
Yep.
went like he got so focused with so wrapped up in this world that he couldn't make what he wanted anymore. And that's what
Yep.
happens to every other character. But he was able to come back and say, okay, yeah, you know what? I do need to go and just do this for the love of art.
Yeah. Exactly. So this is, can I bring this in now? Can I connect this to Nightcrawler?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to talk about the deaths
Okay,
again.
yeah, the deaths are, yeah, they deserve a
They're
discussion.
so good.
They're so fun.
Yes.
Like, yeah, like for such a, like, you know what I mean? Like it is kind of a B horror thing, but yeah,
Right.
it's definitely Final Destination of the
The
art
guy
world.
being like dragged into the painting by the monkeys, like
Oh yeah, that one's good. Um,
oh man, the guy
my
being like hanged in the whole art setup, like
Oh
oh
yeah. Multiple times that he becomes part of the exhibit, and then the other one where she dies beside that chrome globe, and then
yes.
everyone just thinks it's part of the
Right.
exhibit.
Oh my goodness, it's so brilliant.
That is so brilliant. I mean, I've heard of it before. I forget. I don't know if this story is apocryphal, as in whether it is a myth or whether it actually happened. But I heard that there was this guy in a modern art museum, and he took off his glasses and he put them on the floor, and then he just stood around looking at them, and then a whole bunch of other people started coming around and looking at them, and then he just like picked them up and put them on and walked away, and everybody's like, "Oh, I guess I'm a moron."
But then, of course, you are going to have art critics who are going to say, he was the art. He made this art.
Sure, totally. Like performance art.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
My
Yeah.
favorite one was the one with that robot homeless
Yes.
man
Oh my
and Jake
goodness.
Gyllenhaal. That was terrific.
Yes, with him appearing like in the intro, then I was like, I guess maybe are we dealing with like a slightly like futuristic world? And I feel like we were to some degree. Like it wasn't quite present day.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know, just because like that animatronic like looked like it was like interacting with people, and I don't know, like Disney probably has actually done
Yeah.
that. But yeah, and then just it was such an odd thing to include in the beginning of the film, to just be like, hey, here's this animatronic thing, and I was like, okay, cool, whatever, like art comes in all forms, I guess. And then yeah, he comes back at the end. I was totally thinking at the beginning, I was like, this guy is gonna come back somehow, right? Like,
Right. Oh,
and
yeah.
again,
It's
I
gonna
did
be
not
awesome.
remember that it was like haunted art.
Right.
Why? So then when he did come up again, I was like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It was such an awesome, like such a badass looking villain. And like
Yes.
now I did see a little bit of people talking about the movie and they didn't seem to understand. Like, I don't know. Tell me what your take was on that homeless robot thing. Was that supposed to be just a homeless person? Or was it supposed to be literally a homeless robot?
Um, yeah, I feel like it was supposed to be a homeless robot, but not
Me
in like
too.
yeah, not in
But
like
most
a
people seem to think that it was a homeless person. And I'm like, that's idiotic. They didn't even put like skin on like it was very
right.
they're
Yeah.
artists. Like who the artist who made this could have easily made it look like a person. I thought it was
Yeah.
supposed to be that in the future, even robots will become
Yes.
homeless and will become obsolete. And what will we do to take care of them? That we'll have all of these displaced robots who no longer have a place in society, just like we have people right now, that's
Mhm.
where we're heading.
Yeah, and very much, now we're criticizing the art that's featured in
That's fine. This is fun.
it is. But yeah, no, like very much because he was crippled, like
Yes. Yeah.
he was on crutches and everything. And so it's like, well, yeah, he can't serve his purpose anymore. He was built for a reason,
Yeah.
and he can't fulfill that anymore. So yeah,
Yeah.
he's kicked to the curb, and then he still has to exist
Exactly.
in that state.
And he's singing the song "Brother, Can You Spare a Dime," which I did a little bit of looking into, which is a song from the Great Depression. It's once I built a railroad, made it run, made it shine. Like Monty Burns does that on The Simpsons at one point, right? But it's like all of these industrialists from the 19th century who made all of this money and then went bankrupt with the Great Depression in the 1930s. That it's like
Right.
I had so much value and now I have no value whatsoever and I'm struggling just to survive. And it's like, to me, that's what it was trying to do, is it's trying to say that robots seem like they've got so much value that their stock essentially is going to do this, but then it's going to collapse at some point.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's that's cool to hear us just do a random discussion on an art piece
Right.
featured in a movie.
Yeah. In a very strange, like B horror movie, art satire movie. But it's just, I saw some people, like, I don't know, I think I was watching a video about it, a review, and like, I don't know, maybe people watch ours and then they turn it off and they're like, these two guys are morons. But I do this so often. I'm just going to say it. I watch review videos and I'm just like, this person's a moron. Why did they think that their views are good enough to put on YouTube? It's like, that wasn't a homeless person, it was a homeless robot.
Right. Yes.
Come on. Come on, people.
It's very strange, the little things that get people to just tune out from an entire review. It's just like, what? You got that one thing wrong?
No.
You clearly have no credibility. But
Well, that's basically my point, though, that I'm just like, if you're that dumb that you believe that, then I
yes.
can't listen to you anymore. I'm sorry. I'm done.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
um,
okay, yeah. Anything else that you wanted to say, like more about the deaths or?
oh man, I'm forgetting one of the deaths right now.
There was
Uh,
the girl who gets absorbed by the paint and then
yeah,
she becomes part of the mural
right.
outside.
Yeah. I
Rene
feel like
Russo with the velvet buzzsaw on the back of her
yes, that's
neck.
the one that I was going to talk about.
And
Yeah,
then
I
It
that
shows
was
she's like the painting with the cat beside her and the shadows.
yes, yeah. Art imitating life.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was so brilliant because she was able to figure out what was going on and
Yeah.
accept what was going on.
Yeah.
That it was all sorts of different kinds of art that were affected because of them interacting uh, with the
Yeah.
what was the guy's
Door
name?
or something. I
Ease?
forget. D's. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was it.
Um, yeah. Anyway, with all the people who had interacted with that art, then it was any art would be able
Yeah.
to kill her and or kill them. And so the fact that she figures it out and says, remove every piece of art from my
Yeah.
house,
Yeah.
and she's not able to remove the tattoo, the
Yes.
skin art.
Yes.
That's just burned in there, like it's
Right. Oh,
embedded in her skin.
I honestly didn't even catch that. So maybe I'm a moron. But yeah, you're right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's incredible. That's really well done.
yeah, and it's such a we never find out what the original piece was, this velvet buzzsaw, right? Like unless I'm forgetting about it, because I
Well,
don't believe
it was a
like
band that she was in.
oh, was it? Okay.
She was in a band in the 80s called Velvet Buzzsaw.
Okay, all right.
And so I think that was like the logo for one of their, like it was album art or something like that, or their band
Okay,
logo was a Velvet Buzzsaw.
gotcha. See, I had missed
There we
that,
go.
but
Together, we understand
yeah,
the film better.
right.
But here's what I'll say
Yeah,
is that but neither one of us said here's what it means and we're totally wrong. We're just like,
right.
"Oh, I didn't catch it." That's what drives me crazy when people say this is what it means and they're just so off. And I'm just like, "Why
Right.
are you so certain of something that you're so wrong about?"
Yeah. But yeah, no, because yeah, she gets all that other art removed from her house. She's like, this is how I'll be safe. And then she can't get away from it. It's
Right.
part of
Yeah.
her. And
Yeah.
it's
And
yeah.
then she does become that painting, right? That is
Yes.
then life imitates art. It's art imitates life and life imitates art. Um,
Yes.
and it's yeah, that was really cool. I did really enjoy that.
Mhm.
Okay, can I make connections now? The connections
Yes.
I have because I really want to. So I want to know what you think of this. I think that Nightcrawler and Velvet Buzzsaw, as different as they are, they're both like this is why I wanted you to watch both of them. That Gilroy seems to be very, very interested in the concept in capitalism itself. And specifically, I think the free market and what happens when we have free markets and basically anarcho capitalism, right? Capitalism without any rules or regulations, no government intervention, just let people voluntarily develop their own, establish their own rules, their own procedures. That stringers are, they have developed this industry that is completely unregulated, that
Right.
it exists in this ambiguous state of it's not really illegal, but it's not exactly legal either. It's like legally, it's really in a gray area because
Yeah.
you are allowed to film something if it's out in public, if it's on the street, then you're allowed to do that. And depending on what California must have the law that says that you don't have to, it's not a it must be a single party consent state when it comes to filming, where you don't have to have the person's permission to film them if they're in a public space. That
Mm,
as long as you are comfortable filming, then you're allowed to film whoever you want if you're out in public.
right.
So within that, forget about the idea of minimum wage. Forget about the idea of having set values for things, that everything is negotiable
Mhm.
and that you're constantly determining the meaning. So the value of something. So Jake Gyllenhaal is determining what is the value of what I'm doing. And in Velvet Buzzsaw, it is what is a piece of art worth? And
Right.
then you get these ridiculous values of like, that can't be what it's worth. It's probably
Yes.
worth something, but it's not worth millions, whatever. Like, you know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
same thing in Nightcrawler. Then it's like even when he's negotiating with Rick at the very beginning, then it's like forget, like, Rick, because he's homeless, because he's desperate for work, then he can't say, well, minimum wage is this, because Jake Gyllenhaal, Lou, first offers him he's like, it'll be an internship. And I frequently, will like take my interns and offer them full-time paid positions, right?
Yeah.
And then he's like, all right, I'll give you $30 a night, which is well below minimum wage. But the thing is that this is an unregulated industry.
Yes.
And that the art world is an unregulated industry. That there are no rules of, well, if an artist says, well, that took me 60 hours to make, and I should be entitled to minimum wage. So therefore, somebody has to pay me whatever that comes out to, 60 times whatever the figure is for minimum wage in your state or in your province. Like, the art world doesn't do that at all. Because you could take an artist sometimes like 20 hours to make a painting, and they might only get like $40 for it, like well below minimum wage. And he seems to be really interested in that question of, and I'm trying to work it through. That's why I wanted to ask you about this. I'm not sure if he's even criticizing anarcho-capitalism or capitalism without regulations, or if he is just observing it, or if he is making some kind of commentary on it. If he's trying, because to me, there doesn't seem to be an implication that he's asking for regulation, that he's suggesting that there should be regulation within these industries.
Yeah, it's that is very interesting. I think that certainly with Velvet Buzzsaw, then it the overall I guess message or whatever that you leave the film with is that, like, don't get so caught up in the price of things that you forget why you got interested in it in the first place.
Yeah.
And so it's not necessarily, just about like that there should or shouldn't be regulations on these things, but more that you have to know that yes, you deserve to be paid for your work, but you deserve to be able to like set your own price without, like, it is negotiable. Like everything, it's not whatever the highest bidder will pay for it. That's the most valuable thing. That it's more like, it is a negotiation. It's something where it's like, well, sure, they might give me $10 million for it, but they're not going to appreciate it the same way.
Yeah.
So what's the point of giving it to them when I could give it to somebody else for $5 million and they really appreciate it?
Yeah, that makes sense, because that helps me understand Nightcrawler a little bit better, because with Lewis, then he could be selling his footage to other stations, but he chooses to sell it to, I forget the character's name, but Rene Russo.
Yeah, who is at the lowest rated news program.
But she seems to appreciate what he's doing, because very much in Nightcrawler, what he is doing is art.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
So that's what I'm saying. That's why I wanted you to watch Velvet Buzzsaw, because a lot of people are like, oh, I was hoping for another like Nightcrawler. I was hoping that there's and I'm like, he did do this. You just aren't seeing the connections between it, because they're both about selling your art, setting your price, and then having the world appreciate it and see how much does the world appreciate this.
Right, and that's very, very much at the end of Velvet Buzzsaw, when the homeless person, I believe there are multiple, but the homeless person is selling the art there on the fence. Like, this is art that was valued at, like 8 figures, right?
Yeah.
Like tens of millions of dollars or whatever. Like,
exactly.
And they're like, how much for this one? And he goes, I don't know, $5. Like,
right.
It's whatever he wants to sell it for. Like, it's not his art necessarily, but he very much is like, we can negotiate. Like, what do I think it's worth? It's worth about $5. Do you think that it's worth $5? Awesome. There's
Right.
not this, oh, it's been appraised to be $10 million.
Exactly.
So, it has to be sold for at least 8. Like, there isn't any of that.
Right. Yeah.
So.
It seems to be doing away with all of the, I don't know, the protocol established within these industries, like within the art industry. It's just like dispense with all of that.
Yes.
And
So with this, sorry, I do want to harp on this homeless salesperson
Yeah.
a little bit more. What do you think? I mean, we had talked before, so it's interesting because the film almost sets it up like, oh, the art is still out there, it can still cause harm,
Yeah.
but then at the same time, it doesn't fit with the theme. And I feel like the film is more saying, like, if this art that is cursed or whatever is sold in outside of the art world, outside of that established, whatever kind of world you want to describe it as, if it's sold outside of that, then it's harmless.
I think
it's just
so
something
too.
to be appreciated.
Right.
Yeah. But I like that it leaves you with the question, and it doesn't say specifically like, oh, it's definitely going to keep killing people, or, oh, it's perfectly harmless now.
Yeah,
there is this element of, it kind of depends on how things go with this.
Absolutely. I think that it keeps it there where it still has its fangs, but whether it's going to bite or not depends on how you're interacting with it.
Yes. Wow, that's a beautiful way of phrasing that.
Thanks. I am a writer, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, and so in Nightcrawler, one of the interesting things is that you see the other art that he tries to do that is worthless, right? And it's like when he first starts and he's filming these things, and then seeing like a person get arrested for like a DUI or like a shooting or a carjacking in like Watts or Compton or a bad neighborhood, and it's just like and like when he starts filming, people are like, what are you doing? Why are you here? No one cares about this, right? Yeah. And that you can't sell that is so much like the art world, that everything about it is contrived, that it is artificially constructed by a bunch of elitist prats who have dictated to us that their taste is more valuable than our taste, and they will tell us what we should appreciate. And that seems to be the same thing that's going on in Nightcrawler. It's saying, look, there's tragedy all over, but the only kind of tragedy that we really care about is tragedy that happens to white people in the suburbs.
Right.
Yes. And that's kind of like what's happening in the art world too. It's like, well, the art world, like the big industry, as far as like the full value of it, it's like, well, it seems like that you have to be pretty affluent, pretty wealthy to even participate in this, that art is only for the wealthy. And it's like, no, it's not. But that's what the art world wants us to believe.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's it is again like this other connection between the two, or the same connection going on the same lines is, very much Lou starts from nothing, and he's able to work his way into a world that is already established.
Yeah.
That's very much already in place. It has its key players, and yet he's able to work his way in there.
Yeah.
And we're able to appreciate what he's doing because of that, because he's coming from nothing, because he's
exactly
and then again, like in Velvet Buzzsaw, then like we do have that young African American artist who is entering the world, and kind of hedges a little bit, where he's like, maybe I don't want to be part of this whole world. Exactly. I still want to make sure that I'm me. I
Right.
mean, maybe I'm reading too much into that, but
No,
but
I
I do
don't think that
believe
you
that
are. I
there's
think that's exactly it. And I think
yeah.
that's where he ultimately lands in the end. He's just like, I don't
Mhm.
want to be part of this. I just don't want to be
Yes.
part of this industry because if that's what this is, then I don't want to have anything to do with it. I mean, this is like, whatever, this is my podcast, so I can say this, like that, um, for myself, interacting with the publishing world, then I liked that about Velvet Buzzsaw that you get that criticism of it because within the publishing world, there's a similar thing of agents and editors telling readers this is what's popular and this is what's not. This is what's trendy and this is what's not. And these are genres. This is what a genre is. Know your genre. Stick within your genre. I love that about Velvet Buzzsaw. It's like, well, it doesn't stick within a genre. Or
Right.
even Nightcrawler. What the hell is that? If you're gonna throw that in a genre, what is that? And that's a big question. I looked it up and like Dan Gilroy is like, yeah, I know, maybe a thriller. It's like because it's like it's a whole bunch of different things. You know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I mean, and I love that. I love that it operates that it just says genres. What are those? Those are
Right.
artificial constructions. That these films are both doing that because it's
Yes.
just looking at the industry, and these are films that are done within the industry, within Hollywood, that are looking at it and then just saying like, I call BS on a whole bunch of this stuff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I similarly just really appreciate any film, any art that goes outside of the pre-constructed genre conventions or
Yeah.
anything. They are so limiting. And
Yes.
when artists are able to say, I don't care about making sure that this fits into the superhero genre or the romantic comedy genre, then
Yep.
it's like then you've got an original story. And it's one
Yes.
that could be
Thank you.
really good. It's not
Yes.
always necessarily really good, but
It
it
doesn't
could be
mean that
really
it will be
good.
good, but it means
Right.
that it's possible for it to be good.
Yes.
This is the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean it's easy to in large part it's easy for humans as a species to group things together and say these are like things. Let's put them all together.
Exactly. Yeah.
But then you're looking at the whole thing and you're going, "Oh, I have 6 categories and that's all I have." Like, no, you have any and then it's like, "Oh, well, you can have like a little bit of crossover between them." And it's like, "Well, yeah, but that's still limiting. Why don't you just say
Exactly.
like this is an orange, this is a pomegranate, this I don't know, like this is a
Right.
nectarine. They're different things."
Right. Absolutely.
It can
Yeah.
be just its own thing. It doesn't have to
Yes.
fit.
Yes, exactly. I know because I this came up when I was getting my master's and interacting with multiple professors. A lot of professors in the English department where I was, then they were really, really interested in genre studies. And I'm not saying that there is not value within that,
Mhm.
but I felt to some degree that they couldn't really see outside of genre. That
Right.
it had to, that it's like, well, if I'm just a good enough scholar, then I'll be able to figure out that element from that genre and that element from that genre, and then to determine how well it functions as this piece of genre fiction. And I'm just like, why are you starting with these pre-constructed models of what a story has to be? Can't
Yes.
we just dispense with that altogether and just say, like, just a blank sheet of paper, just it could be anything.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah. It's
start there.
right. Yeah, this whole, deconstruction, reconstruction mindset is it's very frustrating. It's,
Yes.
okay, what made that film work? Let's deconstruct it and figure out the specific parts that made it work. Okay, now let's build a new film using those things. Like
Oh, you
it's
got it. You're right. You're right. And that's like so much advice that's given to screenwriters of,
Mhm.
I mean,
Follow
and
the trends. Figure out what's popular right now. Try to do something that, let's see what worked before. And it's like,
study
that
other
only goes
scripts.
so far.
Exactly. They're like, study a popular script, like from a popular film, and then do that. You need to have this by this page. You need to have this by this page.
Oh,
And
yeah, the
uh,
paint by numbers script is
and people have made lots and lots of money from selling that formula, right?
absolutely. And
And so
there is still the ability to be creative in that,
there
but
is.
it's not the same. It's not to the same level or the
Yeah.
same degree as just saying, I'm going to write whatever I feel like writing.
Well, I really want to know for Dan Gilroy, because he's a screenwriter and he obviously has got experience writing, you know, genre films, right? Like The Bourne Legacy or Kong
Right.
Skull Island, right? That like he's got experience doing that.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting with Kong Skull Island. Although I haven't seen it, I've heard, and I mean like it's partly the director as well, Jordan Vogt Roberts.
Yeah.
Then they were very interested in having a film that wasn't tied down to a specific genre, and did
Interesting.
have elements of video games in there because
Interesting.
at the very least, the director, I'm not going to try to pronounce his name again, but he is so incredibly interested in video games and he loves video games. So for him, being able to bring in some video game elements into the film
Yeah.
was really important.
Yeah.
And that's really cool to see, like, okay, well, how are you going to do that? Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
So I've been really interested in watching that film. And so, yes, it does to some degree fall into that genre of, oh, it's, a big action monster
Adventure.
movie.
Yeah.
Right. But I think that there are still a lot of things in there that will be different, that are different, that
Right.
I haven't been
Yeah.
able to see for myself. But yeah, based on everything that I've heard about it, then it seems like it does sort of at least break some traditions.
Okay. Interesting. Because it definitely seems like, looking at Nightcrawler, looking at Velvet Buzzsaw, that Dan Gilroy is not really interested in formulaic writing.
Mhm.
And so I'd be really interested to know how did he sell these?
Right.
Because he obviously had to establish enough of a reputation as a screenwriter who's skilled enough that ultimately he was able to get, funding to get a producer to make Nightcrawler. Because that was his debut. That he had to.
Yeah.
You have to kind of, I think, the way it works is typically you got to establish yourself that I can play by your rules,
Right.
but
Yeah.
let me try to do my own thing, because it is really interesting to me that, and it's such a good film. I don't know why Hollywood doesn't get that, why they don't better understand that. I understand that, like, it just seems like we're past genres. We should be, because genres were such a, to me, it has so much to do with, it is a marketing
Oh, absolutely.
concept, but it also has to do with brick and mortar retail, and that you've got to know where to put the movie in Blockbuster Video. And it's that people need the genres to know what section to find something in, because you didn't go into Blockbuster Video in the 90s and then go to a computer and then just type in the name of it and say, well, that's where it is. But
Right.
you do that on Netflix now. And on Netflix, you can get all these different variations on genres.
Yes.
You can get keywords to then find things.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Netflix's list or homepage or whatever, it is still frustrating and limiting in many ways. When it has like different categories and it's like, because you liked this film, you're gonna like this completely different film, and it's like, why? Like, you don't always necessarily see those connections that they're making, and when it doesn't explain what those connections are, then it can be frustrating. But yes, it is very true that like, it is outdated.
Yeah.
It
Well,
should
because
be.
but well, and it is because Netflix does have that, I think, for people who are expecting to find genres. But if you click on a film, then you'll see it'll have usually three key terms that are not genre terms. And so like I've realized that one key term that I absolutely love is if a film is gritty.
Mm.
Clicking on gritty, then it's like, so like I think an amazing film, which a lot of people seem to be watching recently, is Hell or High Water, which is considered gritty. Gritty is, it's kind of an unflinching look at something, and it often has to do with poverty, and it's not, high gloss, everything's bright and shiny, right? But
Right.
it's, like people driving old cars and they don't have a lot of money and they're not living in the fanciest places. I like stories that are set in settings like that. So it's like clicking on that or understated, you know what I mean? That it's like so gritty and understated. If I see those key terms, I'm like, ooh, that's good. Because that's more how I view film. Forget the genre thing. Something could be a gritty horror film. It could be a gritty drama. It could be a gritty whatever, right? That those themes more so than genre elements, I think, are more helpful. And so Netflix does offer that.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. I mean, Netflix is definitely far superior to to standard genre definitions and categories and everything, whether that be in awards ceremonies
Right.
or in retail shelves. But
Yeah.
but
Yeah. So it's just interesting to me how Dan Gilroy. I'd want to ask him those questions if I could interview him. That's what I would really want to press him on. Tell me about genre. Tell me about selling a screenplay in Hollywood when you're doing stuff that defies genres. How do you approach this? Do you have to pitch it as belonging? Because I know that Velvet Buzzsaw was pitched as belonging within the horror genre. So a lot of the people that I follow, they watched it and they were disappointed because they didn't think it was a very good horror movie. And it's like, yeah, because it is more of a satire of the art world, which then kind of turns into a B-level horror movie. But if it was just, if you're watching the trailer and you're expecting just pure horror because you're looking for all those genre elements, you will be disappointed.
Yes, absolutely.
So was that him who had to pitch it as a horror movie, or was that the marketing team that pitched it as horror? That's what I want to know. If I could ask him that question, that's a question I'd really want to know an answer to.
Right. Yeah. One question I'd like to ask him is why Coco, Natalia Dyer's character, has to come across so many different dead bodies.
That is hilarious. That's a good one. Yeah. Yeah.
She even says at the one point, she's like, I've already come across 2 dead bodies. And then she comes across another one. And you're like, oh my goodness.
You
feel so bad for her.
I'm trying to think if Nancy on Stranger Things, does she come across I'm trying to think here.
Yeah, she comes across the Demigorgon.
Yeah.
But
I mean, is that it? It's just they're like, hey, we know that you can do horror, you can do these great reactions. You've established that for yourself. We're not so sure about everyone else in the movie, but you can do it. But yeah, it was funny.
And scream.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe there's just a certain element of, going back to 1970s horror movies that focusing in on a young, pretty female, that them being scared works better than guys being scared.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if it's just...
And it is also, tying back into that theme of her witnessing this world.
Yeah.
Just on the fringes, right?
Yeah.
Of being really close to it, but not quite involved in it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Exactly. I'm sure that we have lots more that we could say, but I'd say I'm good just leaving it there.
Yes. No, I agree.
Because I mean, and for anybody who has seen both of those, if you've watched this whole podcast and you have not actually seen either film, I hope you want to go and watch them. But if you have watched them, then I would say for sure Nightcrawler, if you haven't seen that in a while, it is so worth returning to.
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, I just watched it for the first time and I'm already okay, I gotta go out and buy it. Like, on
Oh my
DVD.
goodness.
This is-
Yes.
it's definitely going to be one of those films that I watch over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything that you can learn. I mean, as I just think that that is as good as a film can get. Um, it's just, yeah, it is just so well done.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, we're good, right?
Yeah.
This is great. I'm proud of this discussion. This was a good
Yeah.
one. Yeah. All right, folks.
Right.
Thanks so much for watching.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Ignore the bell, people. We're gonna keep going. We're still ignoring it. Don't worry. I don't know what that. I think that's the fire drill. All right. We're gonna go home. Yeah. All right. We're done.